To get this off my chest, I've made this video a few times and it never just seems quite right, but I'm gonna say this once and that's it. It has gotten to a point with black women and black women empowerment spaces and black social justice spaces run by black women that say that they're for black women. They are very like uncritically handing over spaces to um, transgender individuals, male to trans people. And I think it's problematic for the simple fact that it's intellectually and emotionally dishonest to pretend that they are the same exact experiences. Um, Quite honestly, it seems as if, from what I can tell, that black women have decided to replace straight black men because you know, we're understandably fed up with their misogyny. But it seems like we're replacing them with a different kind of man, like bisexual men, male to trans individuals. And somehow we think that we're changing the dynamic, and we're not. Um, I think there's been a very clever move to number one with this whole bullshit cis oppression nonsense of making women out to be oppressors of men. And that is just completely inaccurate and definitely inaccurate for black women because we've never had any power to do that. And women, period, have never had any power to do that. So for me to see these black women kind of taking on this role as some kind of a quote unquote cis oppressor is very bizarre. Um, I think that it has been a very clever move to not only make women out to be oppressors, but it's been a very clever move to kind of make sure that black men have some kind of a safe space with black women. And I feel like they've done that through the gay rights movement because, quite honestly, lesbians are like fucking invisible in the LGBT movement. And that's really lesbians of all colors, but especially black lesbians and lesbians of color. But even white lesbians are really not like visible. And yet it's the first motherfucking letter in the group, in the acronym. Okay, but gay rights has become the face of men at this point. And it's no different from, kind of black gay subculture. It has been very male dominated. And it is as if black lesbians do not exist. The only time you see, a representation of black women in same-sex relationships has often been with it's like overly sexualized and there's usually some guy involved. If there's no man involved in it, it gets like very little representation. um Only very recently did we get like young Ma, but it's like she's not really, she's a little bit more of a cartoon character. Like nobody really kind of takes her seriously, and I don't think she's ever kind of come out as a spokesperson saying I'm a representative of the lesbian community in that way. um there just isn't, not to like digress, but it's very obvious to me that black women are kind of falling for the usual shit. And it's no coincidence, usual shit being dick, being like, if there's no dick involved, it just seems like, or as long as it is somehow, if dick is involved, black women just are just gonna jump all over it. And it seems as if like nobody's asking the critical questions like, okay, how can you really get upset with Rachel Dolezal doing blackface, but then really sit up here and genuinely think that a biological man can be a woman? And it has gotten to a point where when I have tried to engage women, I've seen other black women who are thinking a little bit more critically about this ask these women. I engaged someone on Twitter, I engaged someone on YouTube, Instagram, I've seen it on many different social media platforms. Smart women, women I admire, women I respect. When you start asking them these questions, they have nothing to say. If they don't completely ignore my question or the other person's question, and I'm serious, like they will go ghost on the thread, or um, I had one woman just completely derail the conversation to another. Like she started kind of like bringing up and attacking points that I didn't even raise, and it's just, you know, it's draining and it's silly, because it's like, you know, black women cannot sit up here and claim 1 second that, you know, it's hard being a black woman, and we get it from the moment, you know, we're born, and we're dealing with this dual oppression, triple oppression if you're a gay woman, but, you know, being black and female in a racist, misogynistic society from the day you were born, blah, 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 blah. You cannot say that and then in one breath, the next breath, align your interests with someone who is biologically male and has been socialized as such at least up through their formative years of boyhood. You cannot do that with common sense. You have to approach this with nuance, and it's like the fact that black women are not doing that, it really makes me question like what the motives and the intentions are, because it just is very, it's counterproductive and it's counterintuitive. um and for me, it's like my concern is the fact that the moment they made this a bathroom issue, it's like the Pavlov's dog experiment. You can Google that if you don't know what I'm talking about. But basically, it's an experiment where the dogs heard a sound and they got, you know, they were trained to respond a certain way based off of that sound. And it's like the moment they started talking about bathrooms, it's like everybody responded civil rights, and discrimination, discrimination, and, you know, black people, this is just like black people, and black people, and it was just like black women literally the next day were hopping on board to be a, you know, social justice activists for people going into bathrooms. And let me tell you this, the separation of races, well, the separation of genders in bathrooms was never about oppression and discrimination. At, it was a fucking privacy issue. It was never done to make one sex feel more, you know, feel inferior or superior to the other. Okay, it was simply a privacy matter. It was not discriminatory. So how people see, but see, this is intellectual dishonesty, because we should know that. Okay, the discrimination, the separation of the races through in bathrooms and seating areas was always about maintaining a social hierarchy with black people at the bottom and white people at the top. And it's like, to see people just throw that kind of away and just ignore that inconvenient like truth when trying to make these like false analogies is very, very like draining, and it's concerning, because it's like, well, what the fuck are you kind of fighting for if you're just gonna like sell it out up the river, you know? And you can have nuanced conversations, please understand, without being an asshole, and without being disrespectful or dehumanizing other people. But the ways in which, if it seems like black people and black women in particular, because we are so vulnerable, we don't have any allies. It's just us on our own. We don't have a lot of social power. You know, I do sense that sometimes we get bullied into jumping through hoops for other people's causes because we feel like it makes us a hypocrite or whatever the case may be. And I can understand that. However, you know, we cannot hide behind the term intersectionality to jump on everyone's cause, because intersectionality was not for them. Intersectionality was a word coined by a black woman, black biological woman, to talk about our issues. She may have, no, it's Kimberly Crenshaw, you know, to talk about our issues specifically. It was not for us to like go and give to everybody else every 2 seconds. Okay, this is the type of stuff that's just like, y'all, come the fuck on, man. I'm not even gonna get into a conversation here about like how many genders and sexes there are. Like, I can't even have this conversation with people without people like, again, throwing common sense and basic understandings out of the window. But please understand this. If you want to make an analogy about race and trans identity, look at the way in which the media, who is moving into a space from privilege into less privilege and how people react. Rachel Dolezal, for example, is now became popular, had a new term and phrase created, transracial. Everybody wanted to redefine what did it mean to be black, blah, 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 blah. She moved from a space of privilege, whiteness, into a space associated with less privilege, blackness, as a black woman. And everybody, many people sat up here and tried to promote this shit like progress, right? Black people, for example, for the most part, black people were like, nah, I'm not fucking with that. But white people really tried to sit up here and justify this shit. They wanted to redefine blackness, da da da. Mind you, when it's been the other way around, black people passing for white, do you really think white people sat up here trying to redefine whiteness? No. Because that identity is to remain exclusive. People know what it means to be white. Nobody's going to sit up here and rename words and identities to accommodate the person from the lower class system moving into the higher class system. Nobody's going to do that. Just pass and be quiet, right? People know Rachel Dolezal, but they probably never heard of Anatole Broyard. Okay? This is someone whose secret pretty much a few people knew he was black, but for the most part it was hush hush. Even his own children didn't know till close to his death. That is the difference in the experience. Meanwhile, Rachel Dolezal, people knew that she was white, except for the public, but her close friends knew she was white, posing as black. Now, you take the same thing with this transgender identity. It is majority biological men moving into female identities and getting money from it. That is the most popular thing that you're seeing. You are not seeing it the other way around. You are not seeing biological females moving into male identity and getting money from it. They are not on the cover of men's magazines. They're not on the cover of GQ. They are not winning Man of the Year awards. They are not on TV shows that are promoted and targeted to male audiences with a big role. I can't really even name one trans man, to be quite honest with you. At least not someone who's like a household name. But at this point, we know 4 and 5 trans women, quote unquote trans women. We got Biko, Cherno Biko. We got Jenner. We have Mock, Laverne Cox. We've got CC McDonald. And nobody's asking why. And I would think that black women, of all women who understand how power dynamics work and oppression works, would see that, but they don't. And I'm confused as to why that question is not at least being posed. And I don't know if it's because, again, feeling like your back is up against the wall and you don't have any allies, so you better not say anything wrong. So maybe people are feeling a little bit afraid to say something. But I do think if it's not that, it's just, it's silliness. I don't know. Is it some kind of subconscious heteronormative thing where you feel like, you're going to swap out one kind of guy for another biological man and think he's going to be some kind of like better version? Like, I don't know, but this is not, reshaping hierarchy. This is not doing any kind of serious paradigm shifting. Okay, this is very old. It's very common for men to don female aesthetic. I mean, drag culture is huge. It's very, very popular for men to do that, and then get money from it, and then be told, make it seem like this is social progress. It is not common to see it the other way around because male identity is considered exclusive. Men have always worked very hard to keep their spaces very male dominated, and you have to walk through the fucking valley of death to get to their spaces. We had to go to court to get to education, to get to job markets that were exclusively male. The same way black people had to really fight to get access to things that were kept exclusively white. So it really disturbs me and confuses the shit out of me to see black women just kind of handing over their struggles and their identities over to biological men, claiming that, acting like they're the same thing, giving the conversation no nuance, no critical thought, and considering and labeling this progress. Someone is lying to themselves along the way, and I don't understand what we're gaining out of that. I feel like this ties into my last video about like just this romanticizing like struggle too much. I've been seeing women who are silent on the death of women, and there have been, black women have some of the highest domestic violence rates, matricide rates. They are dead silent on shit like that, but they will talk about trans death. And who is usually the person killing these male to trans individuals? It's other men. And that's the other thing too. It's like men are doing no emotional work in this. They're not undoing their own misogyny. They're not doing shit. They chase, trans people out of the bathrooms, and then that was pretty much it. They got their way, kind of. And now women are the ones doing all the labor, all the like redefining their own identities and coming up with new words to accommodate. I mean, it's how is this progress? How are we doing anything differently than we haven't been doing, that we weren't doing before? Okay, and quite to be to be honest, I don't see how black women are much different from black men who sell out black women. I mean, I feel like these black women are selling out black women just as much. They're selling out black womanhood just as readily. Before we could even fully experience it, we're only now having like an awakening, a reawakening, and like learning our own history. And these women are already like just ready to share their identity with biological men. This confuses me. Um, it is it's sad. I don't really know why this is happening. I really, sometimes I just look at the things that people say and it's like, yo, it really feels like I'm living in a twilight zone, because motherfuckers are just pretending like something makes sense that does not actually make any sense. Um, and I think it's interesting too that there was a commercial for Equinox commercial, LGBT Equinox commercial that was, it really wasn't even LGBT, because again, like I said, nobody talks about lesbians. Black women damn sure weren't talking about lesbians on their social media spaces for black women empowerment, but they sure jumped the gun and went straight to trans women. Shit like that is like, come on now, like, don't play me. Y'all are not experts on gender identity or sexuality. I've been in these spaces for years now. I know enough to know y'all broads were not talking about lesbians at all. So do not sit up here and pretend like you are some advocate for, you know, sexuality and things like that. Like, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Um, but oh man, I was in the middle of another point, but I guess I want to say that black women just need to be careful about not about the ways in which they're used by society to push other people's needs and agendas, and whatever the case may be. We can be empathetic towards other people and have respect for other people without being a fucking social doormat. That was my point. There was this commercial, Equinox commercial, and it was a plethora of black and, mixed race, but visibly like at least part black women in this commercial. So many of them. Okay, mind you, how hard is it to see black women's representation on TV, right? Because just a couple of weeks ago, black women didn't exist for the Pepsi commercial and activism, right? Like, at all, except to hold Jenner's blonde wig when she flung it at her. But black women who have been the face of activism pretty much in our for years, let's put it that way. But definitely most recently, couldn't be found for this fucking commercial. Shea Moisture couldn't find black women for their commercial on hair hate, even though black women were the ones supporting their fucking brand. And yet somehow magically, black women appear in this Equinox commercial to talk about being confused for a man. So let's just understand, how people will try and play us. Let's just be mindful of that. Okay. Let's understand that the system is not going to let go so easily. The paradigms are not going to shift overnight. Let's not get so arrogant that we kind of don't see what the fuck is going on. Okay. Because it's gotten to a point where it's like black women sometimes are kind of like that person who every payday, every 2 weeks they get paid, they're at the bar talking about some drinks on me, buying everybody a motherfucking drink, okay, on a Friday and Saturday night. Then come Thursday, they want to cry and complain that they broke as fuck and they don't have anything. And the people that they sat up here and bought drinks for ain't nowhere to be found. Okay, and then they're going to struggle their ass all through the next week and a half until payday comes. You know what they're going to do? They're going to do the same shit again. Okay, so just it's okay to have boundaries, is basically what I'm saying. It is okay to have boundaries.